stop what I must do. I swear I'll give my life for you.
Welcome, everyone. Isn't that great? Welcome, everyone.
I can't even. just watching myself, I'm like, okay.
Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me and my very special guest. She is one of Broadway's most beloved stars. She is a Tony Award winner, a two-time Disney princess, and one of the world's most renowned concert and recording artists. Please say hello to my friend, Lea Salonga.
Hi, Richie. Hi, everybody.
Listen, first of all, what's it like watching yourself?
It's weird. It's just so, it's weird. I mean, I'm looking at myself and it feels, I mean, I look at it and I mean, my laptop is here and then I've got a camera here. I'm watching it and I'm going, dang, that felt like so long ago. Like so long ago. How old was I when I did that? 29. So yeah, it's, oh crud, that's like 20 years ago.
It was only yesterday. Well,
Let's just say that. It was just yesterday. Yeah, 20 years ago now, that almost 20. So 19 and a half. Because that was like close to Christmas. Yeah.
Well, listen, first of all, how are you and where are you?
I'm in Manila. I'm in my bedroom. And I have, I don't know why I have these many ring lights in my house now, but I'm glad that I do. Because then I can have good lighting everywhere I go, which is nice.
What time is it there?
It's midnight. It's
well,
just
we thank you.
Midnight.
We thank you for staying up because it's 12 noon here and it's midnight where you are.
I'm normally up at this time anyway, so it's totally fine.
Well, you know, the New York theater and the world literally shut down, you know, around March 12th.
Right.
Where were you? How did you find out? And what was that day like for you?
Okay. I had just done, prior to the Broadway shutdown, I mean, you said it was around March 12th. March 6 and 7, I think, I did concerts in Dubai with my brother and a band of 5 other musicians. So I was backed up by 6 musicians plus 3 backup singers and my manager from New York. So yeah, there was all of us. And we did our 2 nights at the Dubai Opera, which was amazing. And I looked out into the audience already. There were a lot of people wearing masks. Yeah. And I felt so grateful because that was when the things were starting to ramp up as far as hearing about infections and getting paranoid with hand disinfecting. I mean, my brother and I were on the flight to Dubai out of Manila together. We were sitting side by side, and anytime either of us sat down, it was like one of us armed with a little bit of alcohol in a spray bottle would just spray each other's hands and the tray tables and the windows and the TV and everything. We were just paranoid in the way our mother is. And I guess because we are our mother's children, we just totally, it smelled like a pharmacy. I think it smelled like an ER in the row that we were in. And it is what it is. It's just, you know, it's the playing field. But I was grateful that I still got to do a couple of concerts because those were, I think, the only full-length concerts I've gotten to do this entire year. And I was supposed to, I think, go somewhere else like the following week, but then everything shut down. And then, so I remember the feeling of uncertainty once I got home, the feeling of, it wasn't full-on anxiety. Not yet, you know, but there definitely was this feeling of, okay, so this thing is happening. What is that going to mean for my job for the rest of the year? Is this thing going to last us a few months? Clearly not. Is this thing going to last us 6 months? And so Josh Poltz, my manager, and I, we always have this ongoing discussion of, okay, what are we going to do? What do we need to move around? Let's keep an eye out on world events as far as COVID-19 and figure out from day to day what we're going to do. And then, kind of go from there. We can't, we have made plans, and there are plans to do a US tour in the spring of next year, which is pretty cool because that's the year I turned 50. So it'll be pretty fun. I turned 50 in February next year.
Wow.
So I know, right? Believe it. The gray hairs are coming out. So that's evidence.
You look sensational.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good genes. My mom passed on. My mom and dad passed on some pretty good genes. So yeah, it would be nice. But obviously, if the state of the world, if the state of the United States is such that it would be, crazy and stupid for me to go into the US, then we have a discussion and figure things out. It looks like Europe and parts of Asia seem to have this thing under control. So I'm hopeful that those markets are going to open up for the entertainment industry quite soon. Soon enough.
Yeah. What's it like at home where you are now in Manila? Like, what's happening with it there?
Well, we go crazy when we hear of hundreds of infections. I think it's like over 220 something. And then I look at California, which is about the same size as the Philippines. I actually don't feel so terrible.
Thousands and thousands.
I know, like thousands of infections. And this is a state that's around the same size as my country. And I'm thankful we're an archipelago, because then it's a little more challenging for this virus to just jump, because there are 7,100 something islands in this country. So it's probably an advantage that is how we are geographically. However, in the more densely populated parts of the country, then that's when things are just spreading similarly, I guess, to what's happening in the US. I think people are just trying to, we're trying to get things back to reopening. I just did a commercial for a telecommunications company called Globe, basically saying that we're in support of you guys opening and opening safely to get the economy going again. So I don't think anybody is opposed necessarily to a reopening, but everyone's being uber cautious and really careful, and not being cavalier, and throwing all caution to the wind as they open their stores and businesses and stuff. And I think the way that these companies are enticing the customers to come back is to say, we have disinfected the F out of this place. Yeah. It's safe for you to come in. And I personally appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's great. I'm not going to go to a place unless I know that they have, done everything they can to keep the customers safe.
Yeah, because the same thing here in New York. I only go out one day a week on Tuesday to shop. I wear gloves, a mask, a hat. I become uber sensitive to touching absolutely anything, because it's not over. It's not over at all.
No, it's not. And so it kind of boggles my mind that there is this attitude where, about wearing masks. I'm like, okay, so if you're saying that it's dangerous for you to be wearing a mask, think of all the doctors who have to perform surgery for like 14 hours. Yeah. They're not passing out on the operating room floor. So I'm like, well, you know what, you do you. And ultimately the graphs are going to show what's going on.
No, my sister's a nurse, so she's been dealing with this nonstop on Long Island, and she's like, you got to wear the mask. And I know the mask has become this whole political thing now, which is this whole other story. No one does. It makes no sense whatsoever.
It doesn't. It shouldn't be a political thing. It should be a public health thing.
Yeah.
And I have friends who are doctors and nurses, people who are working in hospitals and emergency rooms, and I see stories of ICUs, and it's like, and I know people that have passed away, and it's not just people like Terrence McNally, it's people that I actually know, like parents my daughter's former classmate, both of them, both parents died. And so it's like, it's real. When you know someone that's actually passed away from this, it becomes real.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody anywhere in the world is going to be untouched by this, whether you will have it yourself or you will know someone that'll catch it and catch it seriously. I mean, we hear about Broadway performers that have either gotten seriously sick. I mean, Nick Cordero, and also a recent passing of Christopher Truesdale, who was, I mean, I only found out about it because of all the friends from Les Mis that toured with him. So I'm like, this kid was 34 years old, 34 years old and healthy. So it's like, there are public figures that have gotten this, and this is not a joke.
Yeah.
So it's not a political thing. It's a public health issue, and a mask is one of the ways you can not just save your own life, but to be considerate for someone else's, because you might be a carrier and not know it, and you might infect like your mother or your grandparents. Yeah. I mean, I just read about this family in Texas.
Oh, I did too.
Surprise party and 18 people. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
Lord. Oh boy.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think any of them, I think they were, trying to be as cautious, and it was a party in a home. But one person brought it in and infected 18 other people. It was like, I felt terrible for the man who said that his parents were now in the hospital fighting for their lives. But I had to feel a little bit of, yes, absolutely. Yes. You tell them all off. So I felt for him. I'm like, you knew this was going to happen.
Well, I think the biggest thing to take away from all of this is keep wearing the mask.
Yeah.
Wash your hands, stay safe.
Yes, regularly. Absolutely.
It's protecting the other people you come in contact with.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important lesson we can learn from all of this.
Right. And I mean, there are those, those face shields.
Yeah.
There's a Darth Vader one. Wear that one.
Totally.
Seriously. And it's like $10, $10. That's all it costs.
What I also think what's really great about this time period is we also do need entertainment to get through this.
Yes.
Because when we go through dark times,
gosh.
So I thank you for being one of those people who are lending their voice to help heal and soothe as we're all going through this time. So, this Sunday, June 28th, I love it, at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
9 a.m. for you all.
Okay. So
9 p.m. for me.
Okay. And then there'll be a replay Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You'll be joining Seth Rudetsky for his virtual Seth concert series for producer Mark Cortali. Mm-hmm. What can fans expect? What can you tell us?
Well, it's Seth, so there's going to be a lot of. It's definitely a lot of musical theater.
Yeah.
I think there's literally one pop song in the entire lineup. So, yeah. But definitely because of our history with Les Miserables, I mean, Seth has his history, and it's a long history, I believe. And my history with the show is quite long. We're definitely going to have to pull from Les Mis, just because we have to. But then we're also pulling from Sondheim and Once on This Island, I believe. So, so we're going to be pulling definitely from the musical theater canon, the more contemporary stuff. And then we finish off with something especially for Pride Week. So, ta-da!
So have you been in rehearsals with Seth? Like, how is that working with the time difference?
Oh my God, it's hard. It's hard. Technology sucks sometimes. Yeah. But given that we're literally on opposite ends of the world, the latency is not as bad as I thought. Yeah. Literally, I'm delayed maybe like half a second, which isn't bad. It's not too terrible. It's not that bad. I mean, my computer is hardwired to, it's hardwired to a router, and I'm just doing everything I possibly can to, but we were supposed to have a sound check yesterday and another rehearsal. Yeah. But something was up with Seth's computer, because his assistant and I were able to connect just fine, but something happened with him. So it's like, we're going to try this again tomorrow. We've been at this for 2 hours. This is not going to work tonight. But, so after I'm done talking with you today, I'm going to get online with him and see if we can figure this all out.
Isn't this wild? These like virtual concerts now. It's like these sound checks. Like, I have better Wi-Fi than you do. You have better Wi-Fi today than I have. It's like, it's got to be crazy.
It's just the most bizarre.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. I never thought I'd see this day.
Totally.
But people are developing software. I think people are just trying to make things easy so that people can jam together and people can make music together from wherever they happen to be in the world. Because, there's only so much Netflix, I think, that people can watch.
Yeah,
truly.
Totally.
It's nice to get, say, live entertainment. It's nice to be able to watch a couple of people jam. And even for the two people who are making the music, it's healing. It's healing. It's healing. It's soothing. It's a calming thing. So it's as much for us as it is for the audience that want to feel calm and soothed by what we do. So it's and I think all of us are trying to find ways to make a living at this again.
Yeah. Because I know this is a continuation of, I go to Provincetown every year, and of course, this was part of his art house series. I thought, what a wonderful way to bring this virtually right now into everybody's homes. And he'll be live here in, the States, and you'll be live in Manila. I can't wait.
Yes, despite the challenges.
Yeah.
So everyone, I think, just has to go in with a very open mind and realize that by the grace of God, this is all possible because someone decided to create this thing called the internet. And those of us who got on the internet in our 20s remember how long it took to download 1 megabyte of data. And now, 20 years or so years later, we're able to make music in real time and have people actually come in to watch. It staggers my mind that in about 26, 27 years, how this is now so possible. Yeah. It's incredible. I'm just floored by it.
It was dial-up for you kids that don't know, and it took like 6 hours to download a picture. It would start with like
oh my God,
or wherever you were downloading a headshot. It would start at the chest level. Then you'd see, shoulders of a shirt. Oh, I think we're getting a collar. I see part of a neck. Here's a chin. Yeah. It would take 5 hours to download.
It took forever.
Yeah. So
literally forever. And now it takes
seconds.
What, 6 or 7 minutes to upload something that's a gigabyte?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Yeah.
Well, listen, we're all going to be there. So the Seth Concert Series is sponsored by BroadwayWorld and StreamYard, and tickets can be purchased at www.thesethconcertseries.com. And get this, they're only $25. This is going to be amazing to be with you both on Sunday. You are one of the world's most renowned concert and recording artists. What gives you the greatest personal and professional satisfaction with doing concerts and recordings?
What gives me the personal satisfaction? I think singing is just what I really, really love to do. And that is my art. That's what I like to do, to be able to paint pictures with my heart and my voice. That's what I do. Some people have a canvas. Some people have clay. I have my voice. And I think ultimately the thing that art does is to evoke an emotional response from people, whether it's sadness or joy or anger or frustration. What we do as artists is to make people feel. Yeah. So I think the greatest joy for me is getting to affect someone's emotional state, or even just their emotions for like a few seconds when I'm singing a song, to be able to make them think and feel and maybe open their hearts. If they don't have their cell phones, obviously, like that. But if their attention is on the music and on the lyric and on what I'm trying to do, then it's incredibly joyful for me to be able to do that.
Yeah. Did I just read that your beautiful daughter, Nicole, is 14?
She's 14. Yep. She's there. She turned 14 in May.
That is crazy. I remember like doing interviews with you when she was sitting on your lap.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, when she was a baby practically. And I'm like, I read this yesterday. I'm like, I'm looking her up and saying, she's this beautiful young lady now. I'm like, she's 14.
She's tall. She's very tall. And she's definitely going to be taller than me. I mean, right now I see eye to eye when she's standing up. So give her about 6 months. I'll start to look up at her.
Any showbiz aspirations?
I don't know about showbiz per se, but she definitely loves theater.
Yeah.
And I mean, she just did some theater workshops for Atlantis Productions, which is the theater outfit that I work with, and I'm here in Manila. They're the ones who produced Sweeney Todd. The one that I just did here in Manila and in Singapore. So they were doing, I think, summer workshops for teenagers and for children. So I signed her up, and she did everything from her bedroom. So she got singing lessons, she got acting lessons, she got movement. So she was really, really happy, and her teachers had fantastic feedback. And she was just so happy to be able to do that.
That is, listen, it's in her DNA. So the point is, there's got to be some form of this somewhere, right? She was brought up
for sure.
around it all. So the point is, it's there.
Totally there.
Many people were going to make their Broadway debuts this spring when the pandemic hit and the theater shut down here on Broadway. And I cannot wait for them. I hope they all get to make their Broadway debuts again when Broadway comes back bigger and better than ever. You know, Broadway debuts are so magical. Safer. They only happen once. What do you remember about your Broadway debut in Miss Saigon, that opening night? Is it all a blur? Like, what do you remember?
There are things I do remember.
Yeah.
I do remember Alan Ariano getting the gypsy robe on stage. And it was a really raked stage. So him making the rounds was an uphill and downhill sort of, I remember Patti LuPone coming to my dressing room and Cheetah Rivera. And because I have pictures. And I think Charlton Heston also came.
Wow.
I think he was one of the guys that was really pushing for me to come to Broadway. So I think for nothing else, I'm thankful to him for that. I'm trying to think what else. I do remember Sardi's, the opening night. There were several parties that were taking place on opening night. There wasn't like the big one until the following Saturday, which was after our last performance of the week. So it was nice. Everybody could just party and have fun because we knew we didn't have a show the next day.
It was
just that was very smart. And it was at the World Trade Center. And at the bottom, I think there were like these big white stairs. But that was on the 13th. On the 11th, after the performance itself felt like a blur.
Yeah.
I do remember flowers. I do remember Lupone and Rivera coming to say hello and congratulations. Because they had to hit my room first before they could hit Jonathan's room. So I got to see everybody that was going to see him. So I was like, I'm in the best spot in this theater. Because for sure he was going to get visit. No, they picked it out for me. Yeah. I had the bigger bathroom. So I was very happy. So on opening night, so there was one of the parties was at Sardi's.
Yeah.
And that's the one I went to. I went with my mom and a few of my friends. And so we were there. My brother had chicken pox, so he was stuck in the apartment, poor guy. But what I do remember is one of the, I don't know if it was the maitre d' or if it was Vincent Sardi himself or what, but people were starting to pass out. Yeah. The New York Times. It wasn't like in a movie. Like in a movie, people were passing around copies of the New York Times. And it was exciting. I'm like, what's going on? The review of Frank Rich came out. Yeah. And it was a rave. He loved the show. He said that my performance from the West End to Broadway had grown a lot. In the time between one to the other. Of course, Jonathan got amazing reviews. Hint and Battle got amazing reviews. And the show itself was just so critically acclaimed that I'm like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this. This is my Broadway debut, and this is happening. This is happening. It was also Billy Porter's Broadway debut. So we Broadway debuted together, and now he's just this huge star of television, just blazing trails and all of that.
Yeah.
But I remember him when his stage name was W. Ellis Porter. I'm like, dang, that's fancy. Thankfully, it's just Billy Porter, which I think is a much better reflection of who he is. But yeah, and even back then, he was what you know of Billy Porter now. That was Billy Porter at 21 or 22, and he hadn't even graduated from college yet. Yeah. He was still at Carnegie Mellon, which is also where Telly Leung went. So he was, I think, did he? I got to ask him, or somebody has to ask him if he actually went back to school just to graduate. I have a feeling he did.
Believe me, the fans here at BroadwayWorld will answer that. Trust me.
Yeah, somebody can answer that question for us.
Totally.
He had not even graduated yet. And he was making his Broadway debut. He was the guy who was playing the saxophone.
Yeah.
That was him. That was his track.
What a magical night for you, because going to Sardi's, like, this is what you read, what you heard about from years ago. When someone got out of a chair and read the incredible reviews. It doesn't happen like that anymore. That was like old school.
That is old school Broadway. It's amazing. I mean, I'm glad to have been able to be part of that, and also to be part of how it happens now, where you can get all of the reviews all at once on a website. You know, there are like BroadwayWorld, Broadway.com, all of the sites will compile everything for you, and you'll be able to read them one right after the other. And there is still this bubble of excitement that still happens.
Well, you know, that was such an amazing time for you, because you got to work with Cameron McIntosh, Claude Michel Schoenberg, and Alain Bobile. You got to work with that team again. When I want to mention that you were the first actress of Asian descent to play the roles of Eponine and Fantine in Ladies on Broadway.
Yeah.
I mean, how incredible was that? Like, what does that milestone mean to you?
It's nuts. It's nuts to think about it. I mean, there were other Filipino actresses that beat me to Fantine. Joanna Ampil, who got to play her in the West End, and Joan Almedia, who got to do it on the U.S. tour. Yeah. But I beat them all to Eponine, though. It's an amazing milestone to be able to say that I got to do that. And if it meant then that it was possible for somebody that looked like me, or even didn't, to say, well, if she can do that, then I can do this too. And if it in any way inspired a little Asian girl looking up at me to say, if she's able to do this, then I can aspire to do that also. Yeah. Then I know that what I've done has been good. You know, I think that's my takeaway from it, that there are people that tell me it's because I saw you do it that I felt that I could also.
Yeah. Beautiful. You know, you're also known to millions of fans as not one, but two Disney princesses. Of course, Jasmine in Aladdin, and then Mulan. I mean, what was it like living in the world of Disney, being two princesses?
I know, right? Yes. Hashtag overachieving Asian.
I love that.
I think at the time it didn't feel like any milestones were being made. Yeah. I got hired to do a job, and I did the job, like for the first one. And then for the second one, I'm like, well, this is rare. Not a lot of people get to do more than one character. Yeah. So it just felt, well, obviously it felt fantastic. And I like being employed. And Disney has just been really good to me. But it also felt good being part of, especially with Mulan, being part of these films portraying people of color positively. You know, I mean, yes, there are bad people, but there are heroes in it. And the heroes were people of color, people that were very brown, people that were alabaster, pale with black hair, and smaller eyes, but so brave. So it just, if only to show the world that courage comes in so many colors, that courage can be found anywhere in the world. It is not the exclusive property of, one race of people.
Yeah.
That you can find inspiration and courageous women, and anywhere, like in whatever corner of the world. And it was very, perhaps smart, perhaps forward thinking, savvy. We can probably use a lot of adjectives to describe Disney's decision to create those films. But I have to say that as an Asian performer, getting to see Mulan like 40 feet tall on a screen, even if it's an animated feature film, and yes, I got to sing for her, when you see that character not being subservient to a man, being able to speak her mind. I mean, same with Jasmine, someone who would take matters into her own hands to show such courage and, and strength. It's incredibly inspiring to see.
Yeah.
And, there is a generation of Asian women that looked at that and watched that and took all of those things to heart. And I'm sure that there was a generation of women of color that would probably be able to cite that as a major influence. I mean, it's a Disney cartoon, sure, like Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid and The Lady and the Tramp. You don't know just what kind of positive influence a piece of entertainment can be. Sometimes you don't know its power until much later.
How cool was it for your daughter? When did Nicole find out that Mama was a Disney princess twice?
She's known since I think she could talk. She's known. I mean, she knew until maybe when she was around 3.
Yeah.
She knew. She knew that Mama sang A Whole New World, and she was starting to sing A Whole New World when she was around 3 years old. I think we have video of it somewhere. But I mean, she doesn't necessarily, I mean, she thinks it's cool. Mom did that.
No.
But, I think to her, the wonderment and awe of it all is gone.
Yeah, totally. She's moved on.
She's moved on. It's really not that big of a deal anymore for her.
Got it.
She enjoys it.
Yeah. On Broadway, you took on the role of Mei Lee in David Henry Hwang's new production of Flower Drum Song.
Right.
I mean, I love that production. I love the new book that David came up with. How special was it for you working with David and working on that production?
I mean, after he had won for M. Butterfly, it felt so wonderful to get to work with this Asian playwright.
Yeah.
And for him to be giving me words to say, it's like, oh my gosh. It felt fantastic to get to be a part of something and to be able to reinvent something, And it was such a huge hit when we were at the taper. And then it wasn't as big of a hit in New York. And then we were hit by strikes and blizzards, and it is what it is. Broadway is what it is. And it's one of those things that definitely humbles you. When those things happen. But I have no regrets about having done that show. I made so many good friends, and it did change my life. So it's all good.
Because I love that production. I know the book was always sort of the problem with that.
It was always problematic. It was always quaint. It was very quaint. I don't know that there was necessarily anything wrong per se, except that it catered to a very specific taste in a very specific time.
Yeah.
However, in getting a hold of the book and being able to look at these characters again from a very different perspective, it gave Asians and Asian Americans a chance to tell our story from our perspective.
Yeah.
And, the other opportunity I got to do that was with Allegiance. So it was for me as a Filipino musical theater performer to be able to get to do those two shows. It was like, I think I might have just, did we just help to add to the Asian American Broadway experience canon? I think we were able to do that. So, yeah.
You did, because I want to get into Allegiance next.
Okay.
One of my all-time favorite musicals, because I was there from the very beginning when you were doing those big presentations. Remember, I was there.
Yes. Yeah.
When the show was like 3.5 hours, or there's with
no, but
ridiculous.
I mean,
in the best way. It was done with like a 25-piece orchestra, and there was all of you out there. I thought that was fabulous.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Allegiance first on stage, what that meant to being a part of it on Broadway. Then we have to talk about the filmed version of that, which broke all box office records. So what did Allegiance mean to you? Because that was a project you were with from the very beginning.
Pretty much from the very beginning. I might have missed maybe one reading prior to actually officially coming on board with George. It was very personal because, as you know, I'm married to a Japanese American.
Yeah.
So the story of Allegiance meant something to me in a more personal way, much more than Flower Drum Song. Because my husband's family, there were people that actually were interned and had to serve in the 442. And Rob's aunt, Marilyn, was saying, oh, yeah, my cousin such and such had to serve in the 442nd Division. So this wasn't just history. It was personal family experience. So in being part of the show, I felt I got to honor these people and I got to, do this for our family. And and Rob's grandma got to see it in San Diego, and the experience of World War II for her was still very vivid, that she was having very visible, visceral reactions to seeing what was happening on stage. When seeing all the families rounded up and tagged, she was just not having it sitting there. She was, and Rob was like, I was so scared. I didn't know what grandma was going to do. I don't know. I didn't know. Was she going to start screaming? I didn't know. But it's great that her reaction is such that it was, she's passed away, but when she got to see it, it was like this very vivid time of her life. It wasn't just history. She had to flee Southern California. She and her husband headed up to Colorado, where they ended up setting down roots and setting a business and raising 3 children. So So it was great to be a part of it and to help George. This was his passion project, and to help George let more Americans know this happened. It's the history of people of color in America. It's a checkered, imperfect, terrible history. And it's important for people to know that this history happened and that it was real, and nobody should be denying any of it.
Yeah.
I was just reading this Facebook post that Jose Lana posted, I believe. And it was about how Germany dealt with, the consequences of World War II, and how they do not in any way, shape, or form glorify anything that happened. There are statues of prisoners, I think, in Dachau, and especially of this one particular one who was particularly defiant. And it's that kind of bravery that is being commemorated. And I just burst into tears reading this, because it's that kind of courage in the face of adversity that I think everyone in the world needs to be reminded of, and for it not to be erased.
Yeah.
So every little bit of American history or any part of even Philippine history. I mean, we have our own issues. I mean, we were a colony for hundreds of years. And there is a lot in our history that needs to be commemorated and memorialized and remembered and written extensively about, so that the next generation doesn't make the same mistakes that the older people made.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Well, I think this is such an important musical with the troubled world that we're going through today.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm glad that the film broke all these records, box
I'm
office
so
records.
happy. I'm so
Over and
happy.
over.
Oh, yeah. And it was interesting actually filming this, because it was a mix of live performance.
Yeah.
Because we had cameras in the audience, but we would also take what I think Telly called them.
Yeah.
Okay, is it time to make those glee shots now? Is it time for the
Yeah.
glee shot? Where basically there's a guy with a steady camera going around the soloist as the soloist is singing their song. The glee shot.
Yeah.
So it was, I mean, there was no other way to call it at the time, with Glee being something just so incredibly ubiquitous. So, and Telly himself having been on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a mix of being able to do things over and over in the way that you do with film. It was a way of being able to, play to camera and not think about the back row.
Yeah.
That is kind of nice, in order to, for the camera to get up really close and for us to calibrate our performances then for this medium, for the film. But for it to still have the feel of a live Broadway show. So it was a really interesting process getting to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm just so glad that the show is now, that it now exists as a DVD, and it's existing, I think, on Broadway On Demand.
Yeah.
And that people can see it digitally and bring it into their homes, which means that more people now have access to it than it ever did in New York on a Broadway stage.
Would you just say George's full name?
George Takei?
Yeah. I want you to give him a shout out, because, so many people just knew George from Star Trek, which
Right.
was brilliant on, and no one knew
yeah.
that Allegiance was his family story.
Well,
which
not
was-
quite.
Not
Hang on.
quite. Yeah.
Hang on, not quite.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
the Kimuras are fictional.
Yeah.
But their story is not unlike a lot of other stories that actually
Yeah.
took place.
Yeah.
Where there were, where all of a sudden fathers and sons stopped talking to each other.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
those things actually did happen. George was 5. He
Yeah.
was 5 when he was interned.
Oh.
He remembers those barbed wire fences. But because he was a child, his experience of the internment was very different. If
Yeah.
you were an adult, then there would be other concerns of, social studies and history and politics. There's a whole other, layer of it. But for the kids, for him, he would go to a creek, and he calls it a creek.
Yeah.
Many of us call it a creek.
Yeah.
But I would, it's like I went to the creek and I
Yeah.
caught pollywogs and put them in a jar.
Yeah.
And when I went to the bathroom and, the soldiers would be holding their lights, I thought they were holding the lights for me. So he would wave up at the towers and, so a child's perspective of something so terrible like that. It's very innocent. And, and I think there's something that a lot of the soldiers were saying, because there was the suspicion that because these were Japanese Americans, that, one of them was a spy, and that somebody would turn and, maybe one of them's going to bomb something. And I think a lot of the American soldiers who served as guards were saying, not once did anybody do anything. Did anybody try anything? I mean, yes, there were dissenters. Yes, there were resistors. But at the end of the day, nobody did anything. There was literally no reason to round the Japanese American population in the West Coast and put them in some of the most unbearable of conditions. Yeah. It was like, that didn't have to happen, but it did. Yeah. And that needs to be talked about some more.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said I'm so glad it's out there for anybody
Yeah.
in the world to watch, because it's a history lesson and it's
Mhm.
also a gorgeous musical at the same time, which I think is really,
We
really
love
wonderful.
it. We
Yeah.
enjoyed doing it. I get a big song, which was the most challenging thing I think that I've ever done, because I mean I've done a lot of things
Yeah.
on stage in my life. I've sung "Walking on Sand,"
Yeah.
which is hella hard. But I mean, to go from that dance number straight into that ballad, I'm like, I think I looked at, I don't know who I looked at, but I'm like, do you want to kill me? Really? I mean,
You know,
do
the only
literally
thing,
want to kill me?
I compare that to is in Maine when Angela Lansbury does the big dance number of "That's How Young I Feel," and then she has to sing "If He Walked Into My Life" right afterwards, like a big dance show-stopping number, which looks like what you did, and then have this incredible ballad. And I'm like, who does that? But the point is,
Clearly we do.
You
We do.
That's what Broadway does, and that's what Broadway does best. That's a gorgeous score to Allegiance, too. It's absolutely beautiful. Well, you were talking about Walking on Sand. You were last on Broadway in the latest production of one of the most beloved musicals by Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty, Once on This Island. What did that mean to you? Because you and I spoke a lot during that. What was it like being a part of that? Like, sand and water and animals.
Oh my God,
and
we had
everything.
fire when we had all of the elements. There was air. We had a lot of air. There was air, water, fire, and earth. We had every single element.
Yeah.
Literally every single element represented in the show.
Yeah.
And it was fun because I got to be a goddess. It was like, this is so much fun. And yes, every single person in the show was a person of color, but I think I might have been the palest one.
Yeah.
I think it was between me and Isaac Powell, two of us. I think the two of us were the palest people in that show.
Yeah.
We just were. But it was like, but I was the only person of I was not even the only person of Asian descent, because one of our little girls was half Chinese. Merle Dandridge is half Korean. So between the three of us, you had two Asian people in the show. So there was the three of us. And it was great being roommates in the theater with Merle, because she's Asian and because she's very Korean. She's pretty Korean. If I brought anything, that stank of Asian food to the dressing room, she wouldn't mind. It was fine. It was okay. She wouldn't care.
Because you shared a dressing room,
right?
Yeah,
we shared a dressing room. So yes, the goddess of love and the god of death in one dressing room.
Wow.
But she was a fantastic roommate to have, and we would always have all these conversations, and she's Telly Leung says about she always has this expression on her face, very serious.
Yeah.
And it's like, is she nice? Like, yeah, she's nice. She's just drawn that way. But I love her incredibly. She's so diligent and disciplined and so hardworking.
Yeah.
And oh my Lord, just gets in there until she gets something right. She really will get into the nuts and bolts of something. Yeah. That's just how she works.
Did you love doing that? Because you were so close to the
audience. I did. I really did enjoy it. I loved it. I love that we were able to improvise and interact with members of the audience, especially children. I would always target kids and couples because of the shtick that I had to do with the mosquito net.
Yeah.
So, I think there were people on a first date, I found out. Yeah. And so they got, I think they ended up dating. I don't know if they stayed together or if it was only one of those, summer or autumn or winter romances. I don't know. I can't remember. But it was nice to be able to interact, and it was so much fun when Norm Lewis was with us, because as many Broadway performers know, Norm Lewis is the mayor of Broadway.
Yeah.
So Q Darrington had to take a leave of absence because he had knee surgery. Yeah. I think on both knees. Yeah. So he was out of commission for about 10, 12 weeks. So we had the mayor of Broadway, Norm Lewis, with us. And when he interacted with the crowd, I would be like, just in my head, I'm like, Norm Lewis, the mayor of Broadway, ladies and gentlemen. So it was, and I would always give him so much shade backstage, just because we'd known each other and we had worked previously together in Les Mis. He was Javert and I was Fantine. So and it was always so much fun. I remember my first day of rehearsal and he was just laughing. Yeah. And wait, was it my first day of rehearsal? No, I think it was a photo shoot or whatever it was the first time I saw him. And I remember he was in costume and as was I. And I'm like, this is unreal that the first show you and I, a black man and an Asian woman, are doing together is Les Miserables. I mean, 10 years ago, neither you nor I would have been able to say that, right? I mean, I was the first Asian to, and it was a while before I think black actors started to be part of it, with Melba Moore also playing Fantine. And so it wasn't lost on me how meaningful that moment was for me to be able to tell Norm Lewis, the mayor of Broadway, while we were rehearsing for Les Mis, like, of all the shows you and I could do together, the first show that we are working together for the first time is Les Mis. Yeah. I mean, how wild is that? There are a lot of kids now who can probably take something like that for granted, but the significance of that was not lost on us.
Well, I think a lot of that had to do with Richard J. Alexander, of thinking outside of the box, of putting people into those shows.
Yes.
He was one of the first to do that. So,
I mean, he called me into a meeting to say that he wanted to cast me as Eponine in Les Mis. And here it goes. Here it began something. It started something. Shanice was able to play Eponine, I think, after me. There was a lot of people of color then got to play
Les Mis,
those roles. Yeah.
A lot of
and
firsts.
Eventually there was a guy who played Chris who was African American.
Yeah.
There were African American and Asian Ellens also in Saigon. I mean, so it became, it's like, what else could we possibly do? How else could we, think outside the box in terms of these shows and the characters that these people that people can get to play. Yeah. And when the first revival of Les Mis, which still used the classic Trevor Nunn, John Caird staging, that first revival, it was a multi-ethnic company. Like, name a color, it was there. Yeah. You had a Filipino-American playing Marius, another Filipino-American playing Cosette. Then I came in to play Fantine. And so there's got to be a photograph of the three of us, because that wasn't lost on us, on the three of us either. Yeah, when I came into the show, it was really something.
That's great. Well, we have to wrap because I know you have a lot of more things to do.
Yep, but I have Soundcheck with Seth in a minute.
There's only one thing I want to ask you. I mean, you do so much for civil rights and people's rights and charities and everything else. But finally, what have you learned about yourself during this stay at home?
That I bake some real damn amazing souffles. That's one thing.
I love it.
Serious.
Yeah.
That if you open yourself up to learning something new, you never know what you're capable of.
Yeah.
So I found myself capable of being my own audio engineer during this pandemic, because I've had to be. Yeah. And making desserts, that I've gotten pretty good at it. I was just telling somebody that, I was challenged to make biscuits and gravy.
Yeah.
Challenge accepted. So I think what I have found out, I mean, I already knew that I didn't back away from a challenge very easily. But for me to be able to brag that I can make souffles, that is a damn challenge. Trying to get those things to rise consistently. And I think I've been able to master that. So I owe some relatives, once I get back to the US, I have to make that I think, for them.
Well,
But
I think we see a Lea Salonga cookbook coming down the line. Just so you know.
No,
Listen,
that's not happening.
yeah. All right. You and I go back to the very beginning. Like I said, I thank you for always dropping by to chat with us at Broadway
thank
World.
you for having me.
So like I said, again, for our audience, you can catch Lea Salonga this Sunday, June 28th at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with a replay Sunday night at 8 p.m. with Seth Rudetsky. Tickets are available at www.thesethconcertseries.com. They're only $25. You go off to your sound check. I thank you very much, my love. You know I adore you. Take care, my love.
Thank you.
Everybody stay safe, and we'll see you soon. We're going to close out with Lea singing Human Heart, but Once on This Island.
You are home.